If you want to do some animation, I've got all the information. Well, some of the information. Animation is fun. La la la, la 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 la.
Hello, I'm Matthew, I'm an artist and I make animations. I like making animation because it's a really good way to tell a story, and your story can be funny, sad, scary, dreamlike. It can be anything that your imagination comes up with. The magic thing about making animation is that your imagination doesn't have to have any limits at all. You can just do whatever you want, you can bring anything to life. There are lots of different ways to do animation, and the type that I do mostly is called stop motion. So if you've seen things like 𝗬𝗂𝗯𝘀𝗰𝗍𝗯, or Paranorman, or maybe older things like the 𝗱𝗂𝗯𝘀𝗰𝗍𝗯 or Bagpuss, and they were all made by taking an object or a puppet and moving it a tiny amount and taking a photograph, moving it a tiny amount again, taking another photograph, moving it again, taking another photograph, and so on. And then when you play all these photographs back at the right speed, it gives the illusion that your object is alive. Like this cup, for example. I could take this cup and make it chase this banana across the table. There are other ways you can do animation as well. Things like Shrek and Disney films, things like Star Wars, all use different types of animation. But really the most important thing is your idea. The technique and how you make the animation is less important. I've made animations with silhouettes cut out from black card. I've got toys off eBay and made them run around and tell a story. But one of the quickest ways to make animation, and one of the most fun ways, is to use old books or magazines, newspapers, anything you've got lying around really that's got pictures in. You can cut these out, make them move around, and the good thing about that is you don't even have to be very good at drawing to make animation this way. I'm going to show you how I make animations from cut-out photos and old pictures, so you can have a go at making your own animation this way as well. So it's a bit like when you make a collage from scraps of paper, old photographs, things you found in newspapers or magazines. You glue all those things together and you make a picture. This is how I made the poster for my show at the Unicorn, the Iron Man, and it's also how I'm currently making some of the animations that are going to be in the show, which is in the future now. But if you're watching this video now, you're in the future and you've probably seen the show. What's it like there in the future? The good thing about making animation in this way, like a collage, is that basically there's an unending supply of free images. You can just find stuff anywhere. People give away pictures all the time. You can pick up newspapers at the station for free, or people just leave them on the train. You could ask your friends or family if they've got old magazines that they don't want anymore. Here's some nice backgrounds you could cut out and use, for example. Like here's a beekeeper, you could cut that out. Time out. Here's a Lidl's catalogue I've already used. You can see, cut out a potato there. Takeaway menus from fast food restaurants, people just shove these through my letterbox all the time. At one point I was getting so many of these that I just cut them up and made an animation out of them. Now's a good time to think about the story that you want to tell with your animation. It can be anything you like, anything that your imagination can come up with can be an animation. It can be made up, it can be something that someone's told you about, it can be something that you've seen, but you need to remember that animation takes a really long time to make. It's probably best not to try to make something with 300 characters in that takes place in 20 different locations for your first animation, because you'll just end up running out of time. So you can save that for your second animation. So think of a story that you can tell in about 10 seconds, which is actually quite a long time if you think about it. Maybe you just want to have 1 or 2 characters in one location. The best way to help you focus when it comes to telling a story and animation is to make a storyboard first. This is basically just a very rough sequence of drawings, a bit like a comic strip, where you just draw out the main events in your animation and what's going to happen. The storyboard doesn't have to be drawn amazingly well at all. It's just a guide to help you remember what you're doing when you're in the middle of the animation and you're trying to concentrate on trying to make all these little pieces move around. And it's actually quite a good idea not to put all your energy into drawing the storyboard and making it perfect, and save that energy for making the animation itself. But one of the main reasons for making a storyboard, and why it's good, especially if you're making an animation out of cut-out pieces, for example, it'll help you work out what you want and it will focus you when you are looking. Whatever you need to tell the story in your animation, the storyboard will help you work out what that is. So looking at my storyboard, I can see that I want a person popping out of the fruit bowl. So I'm looking through magazine, there's a good person, so I'll tear that out. What else? I need a chicken. So, oh yeah, in this food magazine, there's a chicken. You want to glue the backgrounds down onto a big piece of card. Start from the distance and work forward. So glue your sky down first and anything that might be far away, and then stick other things on top when they're meant to look closer to you. And one of the great things about paper collage animation is that, say if you want to make a tree, it doesn't have to be made out of a photo of a tree. It could be a piece of broccoli. Maybe your character at some point sticks his tongue out. Are you going to find a picture of someone's tongue? Or maybe you're looking through the Lidl's catalogue and you find a nice picture of a piece of ham, and you could use that instead. So now it's time to have a look at what equipment we might need to make animation. When I make animations, I usually have a camera mounted on a tripod with a cable that connects it to my computer, which has the animation software on that helps me make the animation. Other people do it in different ways. The equipment you use is less important than the story that you're trying to tell. And what we're going to use today to make the animation is something that you might already have, or you probably know someone that's got one, and that is an iPad. If this is the first time that you'll have tried to make animation on an iPad, it's also my first time as well. I've never done it before. This isn't mine. I borrowed it from the office at the Unicorn. Okay, so there's 2 very important things to remember before you start making animation. So the first thing is to make sure your iPad or whatever camera you're using is firmly fixed down, either with a tripod or a special iPad stand. You just need to make sure that your camera or your iPad is not going to be able to move at all unless you want it to.
If you haven't got a tripod or a special holder for your iPad, you can improvise. I've piled up some books and laid out some little strips of wood across, which I can then lay the iPad on.
Also, try to set yourself up where you're not going to be disturbed. You need somewhere with a nice flat surface where you can lay out all your cutout pieces. And it's also a good time to think about lighting. You don't need any specialist lighting really for this kind of animation. Just a couple of table lamps is fine. Just make sure you angle them so it doesn't cast any shadows from your camera or your iPad. So the second rule that you have to remember, and this is really important, is that once you've set up your camera and your tripod and your lights and you've got your background in place and everything looks good, if you don't want it to move, you have to stick it down. Because if you don't, at some point during your animation, you will nudge it. And you might think you won't, you might think you're very careful, but this has happened to me a lot of times. You'll be there for half an hour carefully making your scene and you'll reach over for something and it will just move your background a tiny amount. It'll catch in your sleeve or something like that, and you've ruined that take, you've lost all that work, and you're going to have to start again because it'll just be really difficult to try to get that background perfectly in place again like it was before. So now you're ready to start making the actual animation itself. We make animation by taking a sequence of photographs that are all a tiny bit different. Each photograph is called a frame. That means you have to move your cutout pieces in very small amounts, taking a photograph each time. Take a photograph, move it again, and you just keep doing this until you get to the end of your sequence, until you've told your story. And that's basically how you make animation. And then, using the software, you can play that back and it plays it back at the right speed so it looks like it's come to life. So there's a very good piece of software that you can download onto the iPad that's very cheap. It might even be on your iPad already if you're using the one at school, for example, and it will turn your iPad into an animation making machine. It's called I Can Animate.
In the top right corner here, there's a little plus. So if you press that, it opens a new project for you. You can see the whole screen becomes your camera, and there's my animation pieces all laid out. Now you can see it trying to focus there. It's automatic focus, so you don't have to think about that. And here I'm getting my first piece ready, just off screen there, so I'm about to bring it on. You press the big red button, and that takes your first frame. You can see it there. So I move my piece a tiny amount, press the red button again, takes another frame. You can see now there's 2 frames there. I'll do that again, press the red button. Now I've got 3 frames. Do it again, press the red button. There's my next frame. Do it again. You can see 2 images here, a slightly more ghostly version of the other. This is called the onion skin effect, and this allows you to see as a sort of ghostly image the last frame that you just took. So that helps you to reposition your piece for the next frame. The ghostly image won't actually turn up in your animation. No, oh, whoops. See, I didn't take my hand out in time there, so that's annoying. My hand's in the frame. So I need to delete that frame. So if you just press it, press the frame, you can see a little picture of the rubbish bin, or trash can if you're American. Press that and it deletes the frame. Now it's gone. So you can just take it again. Make sure your hand isn't in it this time. Press the red button and there's your frame. So you keep doing this. Move your pieces, press the button. At some point you might want to check your progress. So you press the little triangle, the play button, and you can watch what you've done so far.
It might not be quite what you were thinking it would be like. Maybe it's a bit too jerky or you didn't quite get the timings right. That's okay. You can just do it again, have another go. You gradually work out the best way to move your characters, what the distance should be every time you move them, to make it have the right movement for the story that you're trying to tell. I would say though, don't try to do this too many times. It's good to try to capture your enthusiasm and your spontaneity when you're making an animation. I think if you try to be too perfect, it might end up being a bit boring and your audience are not going to find your film as exciting as you thought they would.
Let's recap everything that you need to do to make your own animation. So the first thing is to think of your story. When you've got that, you can draw a really rough storyboard to help you visualize the story. Then look through magazines, old books, anything you can find to get those pictures that you need to tell the story. Cut them out and look for the backgrounds and everything else, and then prepare your animation area. Get your equipment, and remember the 2 rules. Fix your iPad down so it's not going to move, using an iPad stand or a tripod or something like that. And then also stick down anything from your animation that you don't want to move, like the backgrounds or any of the pieces that have got to stay totally still. Make sure they're all fixed down. And now you're ready to make the animation itself. So find somewhere quiet, take a deep breath, relax, and off you go.